Strøjersamlingen havde for nylig inviteret til præsentation af den nye megabil fra Koenigsegg. Den samlede danske verdenspresse var til stede, herunder også ViaRETRO, og hverken Strøjer eller Koenigsegg skuffede. ViaRETRO fik os en snak med Monsieur Koenigsegg om udviklingen inden for superbiler. Så her kommer det direkte fra kabinen i verdens første superbil, Lamborghini Miura. So, do you like the office?
It's really nice. Yeah, it's like a glove, all this beautiful leather wrapped around us.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
All right, Mr. Koenigsegg. It's been 20 years since you founded the company. And I've always wondered, you're from Sweden, you're from a country producing Saabs and Volvo, and you have snow. How on earth did you get the idea you had to make a supercar?
Right. Well, I guess the first thing to point out, it was never like a business idea. It was my childhood dream. And I think if you choose to follow your dream, it doesn't matter where you are. I just happened to be in Sweden, and as I knew Swedish society to some degree, and I was in Sweden, I tried to do it there. If I would have been in any other country, I probably would have done it there. But at the same time, looking back, I think even though it was not very obvious to build super, hyper or mega cars in Sweden, it was still a good breeding ground. You have a lot of good technology and technical knowledge and innovation power, and some car producers and rally car producers and stuff like that. Yeah. So I think it was pretty good breeding ground, but I would have done it wherever I was, I guess.
How about your personal breeding ground as a driver yourself? What was your first car?
Well, I guess I started driving cars long before I had my first car. I was lucky enough, my family had a small little farm place, and I could drive on closed roads since I was probably 10 or 12 years old in my mother's old Opel. And
not a Saab?
Not a Saab at the time, no, it was an Opel. So I started driving very, very early, and I started driving motocross motorcycles when I was 8 years old. But my first own car was a Suzuki Swift GTI 1989 model. So
well, that's shocking news. I think we better get back to which Opel was that?
right, exactly. Yes.
You forgot?
The Opel?
Yeah.
No, it was Opel Corsa, 1.2 liter manual petrol.
The manual is important.
Yeah.
All right. I saw an interview where you said the building cars today, your own cars, was an emotional act, almost like an act of love. Are you a romantic regarding cars?
I get similar feelings, I guess, to when you're kind of in love with, when I'm in love with my wife or my kids or whatever. I get very emotional about it, and I do believe cars have souls in the sense that myself and all the people that are working within the company and building the cars, they really pour their souls into the car and feel for them, and they're kind of living beings in many ways.
I saw you touch the leather of this Lamborghini.
Yeah, well, this car has skin like a human being. It's even skin colored.
Which older cars do you have romantic feelings for?
Well, I have emotional feelings, and I get kind of excited by definitely a car like this. The Ferrari Dino. I mean, going back, I'm not so much into very, very old cars, but still I'm getting more excited by cars like the Bugatti Atlantic and yes, I mean, there are so many fantastic cars made. It's difficult to single out the best ones. There are different aspects of every car that make them wonderful, or not. So
I think we must make a pause. Regarding the engine sound,
yes,
the car we're in has a sound like music.
I agree.
And a lot of people would say a lot of the car's soul is in the engine.
I agree as well, yeah. And we spend a lot of time creating a very unique engine for our car, as we build themselves in-house, and we've over the years fine-tuned them and make them better in many aspects, not only power but drivability, emission controls, smoothness, whatever. But of course, we build boosted engines, first supercharged, then turbocharged, and that has to do with many aspects, getting the maximum power out of a lightweight engine, also having the possibility to have a lot of power in combination with emission control. And we do get a quite exciting sound from the car, and for being a turbocharged car, it's quite oral. But of course, normally aspirated engines without catalytic converters, or in this case not even intake filters, gives a completely different, even more enthralling sound.
Yeah.
It's just like that.
But you have chosen the turbocharged or the supercharged route, like many others are doing these days.
Yeah, I guess we, in our category, we were very early on choosing that for efficiency reasons.
Yeah.
Now most of our competitors are doing the same, even the ones who used to have normally aspirated, for example, V12s with fantastic sound. And it is regulations and performance targets pushing in that direction. And it's taking away some of the last bit of enjoyment you can have from the sound. It's just like that.
Which leads
you get
me to
extreme performance, but
yeah, and it leads me to the depressing question: is the normally aspirated engine dead?
No, but it's getting. I mean, our customers, they ask for a lot of things. They ask for ultimate performance, ultimate power, top speed, and the possibility to put number plates on the car. And if you put those things together, the normally aspirated engine is dead.
Yeah.
But if you accept less power, maybe not being able to register the car in so many countries, then there is some room for a normally aspirated engine.
Can we learn anything from the past?
Of course, yeah. I mean, we're sitting in a car which is almost 50 years old, and it still feels in many ways contemporary for a hypercar. It's of course a little bit more cramped and so on, but they knew what they were doing already back then. It's a matter of working with the technology at hand at the time and optimizing it, and I think they did a really good job with where technology was at that time. So the philosophies are the same, I would say, and a lot can be learned from that.
That's one of my questions actually, because the philosophy behind the car, the overall concept of this car is almost exactly unchanged over the years. Every supercar since has been mid-engined, low, wide, fast.
Right.
And yours is too.
Yeah, and I do recognize something in our car from this car, this wraparound screen, which is in stark contrast to the follow-up car, the Countach, which has a flat screen. But I always loved this wraparound aeroplane cockpit style, like the Ford GT had, and this car had. Also the Lancia Stratos.
Terrific car.
And it's just something about that kind of functionality and aerodynamics and styling I really like.
Did you use those cars as inspiration for creating?
I did. I mean, I really like the Ford GT, the compactness, the low overhangs, the wraparound screen, the quite simplistic shapes. So that was for sure an inspiration.
Yeah. What's the difference between, we are surrounded by a lot of sports cars here in this collection. What's the difference between a sports car and a hypercar, supercar?
Well, I think if we start with the supercar, I mean, these are loose definitions to begin with. I think there are a lot of different opinions what is what.
You will not hear from a lawyer after this.
Right. And I think, from my point of view, a supercar, they have to be a bit outrageous. They have to be a bit over the top. They have to be probably that the journalist at the time thinks that, oh, this is totally crazy. That can't be done. It's over the top. It's too much. And they have to do it with some bravado and also work doing that, even though it's a bit crazy. I think that's a supercar.
Yeah.
Hypercar came in when there's kind of was this level above supercars, and they had to come up with a name for it. And I think that's even more loosely defined and even more difficult to categorize, but I guess that's where people usually put us. But I don't really like the hypercar name so much, or what it stands for. I know it just doesn't feel as cool as supercar, but
No.
but there is a difference between what people consider, let's say, a Lamborghini Gallardo is maybe a supercar. In that case, we're in a different category. It has to have a different name.
Yeah.
But with our latest car, the 1-to-1, we managed to get 1 megawatt of power out of the engine. So I felt maybe that's a good time to introduce the megacar category, which I prefer a little bit as a name than a hypercar. And I guess we consider us to be the world's first megacar from that point of view. And I'm thinking within 2, 3, 4 years there probably will be a few other megacars in the world, maybe even electric. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, a thought crossed my mind. Have you ever thought about being from Sweden and hypercar production? You could actually make the kit car to end all kit car discussions. Koenigsegg and IKEA.
Now I see. Didn't understand the question. No, I have not thought about that. But
well, you can take the idea with you. I know
you mean a flat package mega car or something like that?
Yes, put it together yourself, and it's cheap also.
Right.
It may break.
Exactly. I have to talk to Ingvar Kamprad, see what he thinks.
Yes, you're not so far away from each other. But this hypercar thing, as I hear it, actually a sports car would suit many people much better. They could take their luggage, for example.
Yeah, well, actually, as I mentioned before, we don't like compromises. So we have similar luggage space to most sports cars. We have 180 liters. We can even fit the roof in the front. And we can do that with very short overhangs. But of course, I mean, you can have a lot of fun in a normal sports car, and it will definitely suit more people's financials than hyper or mega cars, that's for sure. But you know, it's like with everything else. It's like with fine wine or fine watches. When you tested and had everything, and you really are into something, you want to see what is the limit, what is the ultimate I can have, and who is willing to do it, and who is crazy enough to do it, and then you can get hooked onto that. So it's no difference to anything else really. Art, wine, watches, jewelry, whatever really.
So that leads to the next question. What's beyond the megacar, hypercar and megacar? What comes next?
I don't know.
But you're interested in going there?
I mean, to be honest, we are only doing what we can. So we work a little bit different than most other car companies, where when they design a new model or evolve a car or something like that from what they have, they usually put up a framework for what they're looking for, saying we're going to increase the horsepower with 30% or 30 horsepower maybe, decrease weight by 10 kilos and do this and that. We never do that. We start a project, see how far can we go. We have this amount of time, this amount of resources that might fluctuate over the program. And how far can we go with that? We don't know. Let's see. So we just keep on running and see where it takes us. And I think having done that for 20 years, it has taken us very far and beyond performance-wise anything else in the marketplace. So it's just a different strategy, and we will keep on doing that. So probably we'll stay in our newly invented megacar category for some time. By doing that, maybe suddenly we will enter into another space because it took us even further. I don't know. We will just keep on pushing, basically. Yeah.
Could that space be motorsport?
I mean, I'm very interested in motorsport, and it's something we've been longing to do for many, many years. But the regulations have gone the other direction from where we are going. Yeah. When we started out, there was definitely an opportunity to race in the GT1 category, where we had the almost Group C spin-offs with the McLaren F1s turning into race cars and Mercedes CLK GTR and whatever. But as we got ready, more and more ready, we even built the GT1 car, the regulation changed from having to have built 20 road cars of similar type to the race car over a couple of years' time. The regulation changed that you had to build 350 road cars per year of the same model, and you weren't even allowed to have carbon fiber monocoque chassis and so on. That has changed now, but it's still the volume that is the problem. And also the balance of performance theory is also working against extreme cars like ours, because it doesn't matter how extreme we make them, we will be bogged down by regulation to make sure it cannot be faster than anything costing a third of what our car costs.
Yeah.
So there's just no class for our car.
No.
But it would be very exciting if someone set up a category with you put in roll cages, change tires and brakes, and you race Koenigsegg, Bugattis and Paganis and Enzos or something like that. Very expensive series, but very exciting series as well.
I hope some race organizer hear this.
That would be exciting.
Yeah, because I guess a lot of people would really want to see that.
It would be exciting to watch for
it
sure.
would. Regarding the output of cars, in fact, in the 20 years your company has existed, you've only made about 100 cars.
Just over, yeah.
How's that for efficiency?
Well, I would say given the amount of people involved and the amount of technology we've developed, I think we've been quite efficient. But of course the number is extremely low, but we're very few people. And now we are at our largest state ever. We are like 60, 65 people in the whole organization. And I think we're efficient, but it's very low volume.
Would you consider moving into a market with more potential volume, like a Koenigsegg Light?
Yeah, so I guess when I look back at my dream of building cars, it wasn't necessarily to only build extreme wild cars like we're doing now, but the necessity of making a successful company drove us in that direction, because when you start out small, you can't start out with a huge production line with presses and thousands of people and make a cheap car. You have to make them by hand with a small organization, and then they become expensive, and in order to sell them for the cost of production, they have to be exciting, and in order for them to be exciting, they have to be fast and whatever. So it kind of forced us in that direction. But over time, I'm hoping to be able to expand the company and the volume of cars, and also make a little bit more normal cars.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
What I was looking for was a modern Lotus Elan,
Right.
which didn't fall apart, of course.
Right. And I remember when I started out, when I was 22, I said to myself, it's now or never, and I better start when I'm young, because it's probably going to take a long time to fulfill this dream.
Over those 20 years, what's happened to the first Koenigseggs? Have they become classics?
I would say so, yeah. The first prototype has been in a museum in Sweden for the last 10 years or so now. We're now in a museum in Denmark, and we just delivered one of our absolute first production cars to this museum today. And we have a few other cars in museums around the world as well. So I think we can say that the early cars are becoming modern classics of some sort.
Yeah. How are they regarding rust?
Very good, because they're almost all carbon fiber. So there's very little, and the metal parts we have are all treated and coated and so on. So you don't really have to worry about rust whatsoever.
As I heard, that's brilliant. A classic that doesn't rust. An
Right.
instant classic.
Right.
Well, thank you very much for talking, Christian.
My
It's
pleasure.
been a pleasure. And
Great.
best of luck in the future. And please remember the IKEA supercar.
Right. I will.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thanks.
Well, it was a pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you.